it is 6:01, and I'd like to call this meeting of the Lunenburg School Committee to order. And I will turn it to Dr. Burnham to do so.
Good evening, everyone. As a preliminary matter, this is Dr. Burnham, Superintendent of Schools. I will do a roll call to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Chair, Mrs. Carol Archambault.
Yes.
Vice Chair, Mr. Brian Leighton.
Yes.
Secretary, Ms. Laura Kelly.
Yes.
Ms. Sophie Shapiro.
Yes.
Mr. Anthony Scolombrini.
Yes.
Our student representative, Sean Delaney.
Yes.
Hi, Sean.
Hi.
And staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Recording Secretary, Ms. Susan Summers.
Yes.
Business Manager, Mr. Michael Cassidy.
Yes.
LHS History and Social Sciences Department Head, Mr. Warren Stevenson. Not sure that Warren's joined us yet. Our K-8 Social Studies Coordinator, Ms. Lisa LeBlanc. And English teacher from the high school, Ms. Mary Boyle.
Yes.
And our athletic director, Mr. James Funnell.
Yes.
And this evening we have our school principals, Mr. Santry, Mr. Adams and Mrs. Champagne joining, as well as our Director of Teaching and Learning. They will join me in a presentation on climate and culture in a little bit. I'll turn it back to you now, Mrs. Archambault.
All righty. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised this meeting is being recorded and is being broadcast over Lunenburg Public Access Channel and streaming on Facebook Live. And this meeting of the Lunenburg School Committee is being conducted remotely. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, public meetings may be conducted remotely. The order, which you can find posted on the town website on the COVID-19 Information Center page, accessed through the town manager's webpage, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. However, this meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Lunenburg School Committee is convening by telephone conference, video conference, via Zoom app, Facebook Live, etc., as posted on the town's website, identifying on how the public may join. For Zoom meetings, please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and that you take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. I am going to introduce each speaker on the agenda. When they conclude their remarks, any member of the committee is welcome to provide any comments, questions, or motions. Please hold your comment until your name is called. Remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in colloquy with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. So turning to the first item on the agenda is the chair's report. And I have no report today, nothing to say. So we're going to move on to public comment. Let me just comment. I want to remind the public that the first public comment section is for agenda items only. The second public comment section is open to any topic within the scope of authority of the school committee. Public comments about individual students are prohibited, but to protect the privacy of the student per state and federal law. So do we have any public comments this evening? I don't see any either. Anyone on the committee wish to make a public comment? I'm not seeing that either, so we will move right along. To review and approve the minutes. Review and approve the minutes of the regular session on March 16th, 2022. Is there any discussion about those minutes? Then is there a motion about those minutes? Ms. Kelly?
I will make a motion to approve the minutes from March 16th.
And is there a second? Mr. Leighton?
I'll second that motion.
And we need a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Shapiro?
Yes.
Mr. Sculombrini?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Leighton?
Yes.
Mrs. Archambault?
Yes. Next on the agenda is to review and approve line item transfers. I do believe we have one. Mr. Cassidy, so nice to see you.
Thank you. Mike Cassidy, business manager. This evening there is a $96,000, $96,620 transfer in front of the school committee. It's getting close to the end of the year. We've closed out a number of line items and done with purchasing. So we're allocating funding in budgets that needed to close out the end of the school year. So this evening, I'll just go briefly through the accounts that money is being transferred into. And what I try to do for the committee on this transfer, if you look into the school committee folder, is I try to separate the to and froms into particular sections. So you get an idea of where the money's coming from. I guess I tried to keep the facility money being transferred coming out of the other facility accounts. So I did the best job I could presenting that information. This evening, there's a transfer of $19,950 to support the newly hired guidance counselor down at the the primary school. There's a shift of funds between the day-to-day sub and long-term sub accounts that'll support the elementary school day-to-day sub accounts. We're shifting some of the facility account salary money, surplus money, into the overtime at the middle school and high school. And it's important to note that this is the extra overtime has supported the lunchtime cleaning and sanitizing during the school day. So it's bringing in extra staff to make those areas and those services as sanitized as possible. The next batch of transfers primarily at the district level. There's an $8,900 transfer and a $7,600 transfer. Okay, let me just address the 89. There's an $8,900 transfer for district survey with the climate center. There's a $7,600 transfer out of general supplies. And this account is a little out of whack. This is the supply account that we've used for any COVID related expenses. So right now we're looking at about $7,600 that we've needed to invest for COVID supplies and equipment. And that includes masks. It includes plexiglass, additional plexiglass purchases, mostly for lunchrooms. Mm-hmm. There's a $14,000 increase for the money was encumbered for investigative and legal support that the district needs on some cases. another $2,500 in contractual services. And this probably should have appeared in the next section, which is technology, but it's for additional subscriptions that we needed district-wide to support our students in classrooms. And then under professional development, we needed additional money to support the visions training that's going on for district administrators. And I believe it's with the curriculum teams. The next group is with our facility accounts. $850 is needed to support additional state inspections for our boilers and our elevators. And $1,060, that account for fire and safety and furniture, that was just under budgeted for that amount. And then finally, the next batch of transfers is all of our IT purchases. So there's a $33, $60, $8,000 and a $6,000 transfer that will support new equipment and supplies. This is basically replacement equipment for students and staff district-wide. Publicly, I'd like to state that the money for these transfers are coming out of our elementary school teacher account, which has a surplus, long-term substitute account from the primary school. The overtime for the high school is coming out of our primary school custodians due to a late year hire, and our maintenance salary account, which is some additional funds from some turnover in that account. We transferring $2,000 from our emergency expenditures, which is an account that we keep throughout the year. But we're so far into the year, I think we can allocate some of that money to some other areas in the budget. And then finally, we're identified additional surplus funds in our special education transportation line and our out-of-district tuition for private schools for students.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully, visually, you can see where some of the money is being allocated. This will be posted within the shared folder for the committee to sign if it is voted on and approved this evening. So I'll turn it over to the chair for any questions regarding this transfer.
Sure thing. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Cassidy regarding these line item transfers? I am seeing, I'm seeing none. So does someone have a motion to accept these transfers as presented? Mr. Leighton?
I'll make a motion to accept the line item transfers as presented.
And Ms. Shapiro?
I'll second that motion.
And a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Schoenbrini?
Yes.
Ms. Shapiro?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Leighton?
Yes.
Mrs. Archambault?
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. And may I just make an announcement that on May 4th, I was scheduled to prepare a budget update. That budget update will be provided to the school committee on April 27th.
Okay,
so
thank you.
You can expect that, okay?
Thank you very much, Mr. Cassidy.
Thank you.
All right, so moving on, we go to the superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to provide you some update as to COVID numbers. The positivity rate in Lunenburg as of April 1st was 1.38%. Massachusetts is currently at 2.67%. Case numbers for the last several weeks. Week ending March 18th, we had 1 case. Week ending March 25th, we had 6 cases. Week ending last week, April 1st, we had 7 cases. And currently this week, as of today, we have 6 cases. Just as a little bit of an update, nurses are providing isolation and quarantine information and referring to Neshoba and or primary care providers as needed. No contact tracing has been required since symptomatic and asymptomatic testing options are fully in place. Nurses are carefully monitoring the numbers in their buildings, looking for any concerning trends. If for any reason they are concerned about a particular area, they will contact Trace, notify parents, consult with Neshoba. At this time, we are seeing no concerning trends. Cases are here and there, and it's looking to be household-based spread. Vaccination rates. The primary school is at 49% fully vaccinated. Turkey Hill Elementary, 58%. The middle school at 64%, and the high school at 74%. And that's all the COVID update I have for this evening. We do have some new grant funding that I'd like to make you aware of. We received a supply chain assistance funds grant award in the amount of $37,596.71. This is to support food service. This grant will pay for commodities only. I'd also like to let everyone know that we had a special recognition for our nurses today. Representative Kushmerek presented all of our school nurses with citations recognizing them for all of their efforts in supporting students, staff, and families throughout these last 2 years. Their hard work and dedication and contact tracing in support of our local Board of Health went a long way toward keeping the entire Lunenburg community as safe and well as possible. So again, we'll offer our gratitude to our nurses. Few reminders, today is National Paraprofessionals Day, so we'd like to thank all of our paraprofessionals for the fantastic work they do day in and day out supporting students and teachers. April 11th, registration for Extended Day and Early Learning Center programs will open. Information will be available on that registration on our website on the morning of April 11th. April 15th is the deadline for completion of the online transportation form. The link can be found on the bus information page on our website. As a reminder, April vacation is right around the corner. April 18th through the 22nd is school vacation week. And I'd like to alert families to be on the watch for a family communication survey that we plan to have out the week of April 25th. And our next school committee meeting will be on April 27th via Zoom. And it's just important to remind everyone that all of our meetings through the end of the year will be held via Zoom. And we're looking at 6 p.m. start times for those. Some administration personnel updates. Mr. John Murphy is no longer with the district. We will be posting the position of facilities director immediately. And lastly, I'd like to announce that I have asked Mr. Santry to remain in the role of Lunenburg Middle High School principal, supported by 3 assistant principals. In our discussions, he conveyed that he feels that this model was successful and they did have a successful year. And he's eager to continue the good work that he started with his team and teacher leaders in both the middle and the high school. I think it's important to note that as I contemplated this change becoming permanent, I had an opportunity to hear from parents, staff, and students. I had my own experience through our leadership team work, and I took an opportunity to explore the impact of permanent change to the middle high school administration model. I held Zoom forums with families, students, and staff. Family and student forums were not well attended. However, the staff forums were well attended. And I also had several conversations with individual staff members, small groups of staff, and received emails from staff, all of which provided feedback for consideration. I explored the implications of this change as it relates to NEASC, MIAA, and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education in terms of designation of our schools. First, we will be able to continue with Lunenburg Middle School and Lunenburg High School, recognized by the Department of Ed as two separate schools, and they will be reported. MCAS data, district profile, report cards, etc., as two separate schools. Secondly, MIAA establishes the rules for eligibility to participate in high school athletics. However, as was done this school year, the school committee can impose further restrictions on eligibility for participation. Lastly, grades 6 through 8 would participate in the next NEASC review. This is the only change resulting from this new administrative structure. So all of our current practices, past practices would remain the same with this one exception. Having additional grades participate in this review process will be beneficial. I know that the middle school staff may feel a bit overwhelmed at the thought of a NEASC review. I think most high school teachers also feel overwhelmed when it's that time again. But we now have a director of teaching and learning, and we have curriculum coordinators who will be able to guide and assist all of our staff through this next review process, which is 8 years away. We have time to prepare. Teachers and parents alike expressed their concern that while Mr. Santry has demonstrated the ability to lead as the principal of the entire middle high school, the concern was there that it might be too big a job for one person. As the schools will continue to be designated as two schools co-located, there does remain an opportunity to return to a two principal model in the future if it's deemed that that is beneficial. Teachers also provided feedback on other matters. An example, there was conversation around the challenges of the current school schedule. And we talked about how those challenges can be addressed through ongoing dialogue with both the middle and the high school faculty. And there's a possibility that we could look to form a scheduling committee to further explore options in that regard. But I feel very comfortable that having looked into things and having heard from many people that we did have a successful year in this model with the leaders that are in place at the middle high school. And I have no concerns with continuing with that model. And Mr. Santry assures me that he feels he has a strong team in place to be successful. So I hope that you will join me in congratulating Mr. Santry on this permanent appointment as the principal of Lunenburg Middle High School. A message will go out to all families and staff this evening, making the same announcement. And that's all I have.
All right. Well, congratulations, Mr. Santry. That's a big job.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. Burnham, for this opportunity, really, and for the trust you've instilled in me. And I take it very seriously. And I am looking forward to moving both of these buildings forward in the next few years. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So next on our agenda is our student representative, Sean.
Thank you. As always, I'll start with the high school report. Prom committee has been selling prom tickets after school throughout all of March. The student council, along with the Best Buddies, participated in the polar plunge at Lake Whalum on the 16th. The senior class held a dodgeball tournament on March 18th. Sophomores had English MCAS testing on the week of the 21st. Seniors have started their countdown, and as of today, only have 27 days left of school. Onto the middle school. Quarter 3 ended on April 1st, and students are now in the final quarter of the school year. 8th grader Katie Dakin was nominated by the school's administration as this year's Lunenburg Project 351 ambassador. She is focusing on the nonprofit Cradles to Crayons. The middle school science Olympiad team finished in 3rd place in the state at this year's competition. And lastly is Turkey Hill. Students in all grades had English MCAS testing the week of the 29th. The spring session of the after-school music program started on the 29th. That's all I have.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you.
So next on our agenda is Introduction to Law.
This is where I'll invite Mrs. LeBlanc to provide a little update for you on this brand new course this year. And I have to say, I've been aware of all the different guests that have come to the class, actually participated and attended a class. It's really been, I think, a great addition to the course offering at the high school. So I'll turn it over to Mrs. LeBlanc, and you should have the capacity to screen share your slides, or I can do them for you.
That's fine, I think. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes.
thanks. I will. Oh, yeah, no, hold on. I want to make sure I don't show my grades, which would be a real, real issue. Oh, man. Okay, hold on. You know it's the end of the term, everyone. Okay, that works better. Okay, so yes, this has been a little bit of a brainchild that we've had for a couple years, even going back before Dr. Burnham was with us, when we had superintendent comms. We would talk about the mock trial program that we had and the extensive work that the students were doing, like the high level learning that was happening. And we felt like it needed to be a course, and it doesn't necessarily work that mock trial students take the intro to law course or intro to law students need to take the mock trial course, but it is like an area of interest for a lot of students, and they are able to make connections between both of them. So there are, a couple things that were the aim of the class when we started it, that it's a semester class. It's run as an elective for the history social science department. And it's typically, we did it once, but it will typically be juniors and seniors because our freshmen and sophomores have required history courses that they need to take. So there was a sophomore in the first section. She is interested in a history path, so she chose extra history electives. For next year, we have over 20 students enrolled. So it will run as one semester, the fall semester again. And we'll see, hopefully we can continue to drum up some interest in the following years. We focus on legal understanding, especially new vocabulary. There are so many words that the students don't understand that have to do with law. And they're the same words that often adults don't understand when they have to do with law. So that's been really fun to kind of pick out the words that I might be comfortable with and remember. We did a lot of having conversations and then stopping and be like, raise your hand if you heard a word that you don't know. And then we would identify that it needed to be a vocabulary word. We incorporate general knowledge on government, which as a civics teacher, that's something that's easy to see the crossover between my two courses. And then we definitely incorporate mock trial into the process, the case law, the process. That's a big part, the process of civil or criminal trials. The real world application was the part I was most excited about. It's like we said when we started the course to students, it's not about, legal trouble that you might get in. It's actually about all the interactions with law that you don't understand you're going to get into. When you go to college, when you apply for financial aid, you are signing a contract. What does that mean? What are you held accountable for? They are getting their licenses or have their licenses. They are setting up bank accounts. They are doing all sorts of stuff that has them interacting with the law. All sorts of things, even personal things that I know that the students are going through, connections that they can make that happen in class that are law related. And then exploration was something else, a driving force in this class. There are so many different avenues that you can take with a law degree or just with an interest in law. And students originally came in thinking that you needed to be a lawyer, but that's not really the only path. And you certainly don't need to be a criminal attorney. There are so many different things that you can do. And they seemed really interested in that. This was just kind of a slide showing how we started our unit, talking about law basics. These students, juniors and seniors, did not get civics as a full year course. So it was important for me to recognize they actually didn't have as much government background as the next years of students will. So that was kind of filling in some of the missing information. Here are the general topics. We covered lawmaking at the federal and state level. They got a kick out of looking through Massachusetts general laws. The website's actually pretty easy to navigate, and finding some obscure laws on the books. They enjoyed that very much. We looked at settling disputes, and that's actually when Dr. Burnham joined us. When I talk about our guest speakers, we were so fortunate to have the school's attorney, Melissa Murray, who town council, she came and joined us, and then Kate joined us. And then the three of us were able to talk about some of the positive ways we settle disputes through negotiation and negotiation strategies. And that was it was a really cool crossover, kind of bringing all the worlds together. So we cover, the court system, the difference between civil and criminal law. They are high school students. If I could only teach them about criminal law, they would be thrilled. They want to talk about crimes all the time, especially the big ones. So we did focus on that. I wanted them to drive what we were doing with the course, and they were super interested in that. I know that Mr. Scullambrini is interested maybe in connecting with us next year, and I'm looking forward to growing our guest speakers list as well. So those are just a list of things that we kind of covered. This was just one of the strategies we were using was scenarios. Very important. Sometimes we use real cases, definitely. The kids were interested in that, but we tried to look at scenarios. What would you do? What's the moral issue? What's the legal issue? Where would we go to find this? We really dove into the O.J. Simpson trial. For all of us who are above the age of 18, we, I guess maybe even older, they don't know. They had no idea all the things that I thought they would remember. So we looked at this with fresh eyes in a sense, which was so cool because the O.J. Simpson trial covers so much law in so many different areas. Jury selection, use of evidence, fame, fortune, systemic racism. We looked back at what was happening in the culture, what was happening in California at the time. We were able to really go in some cool avenues with the kids kind of leading the way about what they wanted to talk about. And this was a primary focus for us. It helped us pick some projects to focus on. So we created, here, this one, Infamous Trials. We created a project called an Infamous Trial Project where they needed to pick an infamous civil or criminal trial that happened in the United States. They needed to do a whole host of things. They needed to look at jury selection, and they needed to talk about the cases, the main points that both sides made. They needed to make a timeline of the events and then a timeline of the trial, discuss the verdict. They were great. And I definitely learned, and I'm sure I went to Mr. Santry on this, to just getting used to juniors and seniors and understanding that I needed to sometimes say, like, I know you want to show pictures of things that are, you know, some horrific things. We just need to figure out what the high school appropriate boundaries of some of that is, and also the triggering events and trauma. And so we did bring some of the mental health component into this. Like, what issues were you comfortable talking about? Is someone presenting on a topic that is sensitive to you? And is there an opportunity for you to exit the room? So you don't need to hear about some of these specifics. So for me, working with juniors and seniors was new. And there are fewer boundaries, but there still are boundaries. So we were working on that part. Just a couple other things. We, for a civil case, we looked at a civil action using some of the book, and then the information from the event itself, and then also the trial and the movie. The kids really enjoyed that. They also did not grow up knowing about that, so it was pretty much a new thing for them. We watched some Judge Judy, and we analyzed some small claims court, and they really thought that was fascinating, looking at the different ways small claims works, which is hopefully, if you're going to end up in court, the court you end up in, and not a bigger one. So we were just trying to find some things high school kids would be interested in. They did a law teaching project at the end where they needed to pick any part of the law that we didn't get to and present it to somebody else. I had fantastic presentations. One student did one on juvenile justice, and we had another presentation on divorce in different states and what the laws around divorce look like in different states. And it was just great. And then the last thing I'll say is that we did a criminal justice reflection. We looked at the Innocence Project, which helps support and investigate wrongful convictions in the country. And then having the students analyze some things that they learned. What are some takeaways? How can they, even if they don't go into law, look at that and be mindful of conversations about that involve criminal justice reform. So the guest speakers, so great. Jennifer Flanagan, former state senator, came. She talked to the kids about her time on the Cannabis Commission, which was great. She also talked to us about making laws for all of her time in the State House. Melissa Murray joined us. Officer McNamara joined us. Attorney Matt Gilman, who has an office in Lunenburg, he talked to the kids a lot about, he specializes in licenses and traffic infractions. And he gave the kids a lot of good advice. I know they're driving. It makes me concerned. So he told them the do's and don'ts. And Attorney Tom Pierce, who's a public defender in Essex County, totally different kind of talking to us about defending those who have no money, who are, accused of crimes and are looking for some support. And he talked to us about the struggles and the benefits of working in that type of law. We had so many other attorneys. I think I saw Mr. Franco on here earlier too. He offered to join us, and Mr. Scalabrini offered. And next year we just need to pace out how I'm going to do it and how I'm going to fit everybody in. So these are just some student survey responses. I still am figuring out how much work for an elective is the right amount of work. That's something I've talked to Mr. Santry about. I talked to the history department about that. That's just like something to navigate. The content can be challenging. I do need the workload and the work to match that in a way. Kids liked the mock trial stuff. Some of them wanted it to be a little bit more structured. It probably that idea that we were searching this out together and finding out what we wanted to spend time with, that might become a little bit more structured in the future. So I'm happy to take any questions. I think I told Mr. Santry the other day, it's just so fun to like come to work and love what you teach every day. And it's really exciting. I'm really thankful for the opportunity to have teachers in departments come up with new ideas for content that we think kids in Lunenburg would benefit from, and that the district is willing to support us in providing new opportunities.
Mrs. LeBlanc, I think I want to take that course. It's absolutely engaging, and I think the students are just so fortunate to have the opportunity to work with you on this topic. Is there anyone on the committee that would like to make a comment? Mr. Leighton.
Thanks. I would agree with Carol. It does sound very engaging. And I like what you said about the course. It's a first-year course, so you don't be afraid to keep tweaking it and adjusting it and making it better. One idea I had was just like the civil service idea of it. Like, does it prepare them to potentially take the test, and also even getting firefighters maybe to come to as a speaker as well as an option? I thought of that as well, but I love the idea of the course.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that.
Anyone else? I am not seeing anyone else. So thank you very much, Mrs. LeBlanc. That was terrific. Moving on, we have a school climate overview.
So this evening, I'm going to give you a little bit of an update on the work we've been doing relative to the strategy on cultivating climate and culture. Just take a moment here to Can you all see that?
Yes.
So along the way through these slides, Mrs. Scott will join me, as well as the principals, as we move through and discuss all of the information to share this evening. So we've been working to gather data this year through conducting climate surveys, SWOT analysis, and some work on relationship mapping. So first, we'll talk about the climate survey results. We'll look at a bit of an overview. So we partnered with the National School Climate Center, and we administered their comprehensive school climate inventory. Just so that we all understand what we're talking about when we say school climate. School climate is the quality and character of school life. School climate is based on patterns of students, parents, and school personnel's experience of school life. It also reflects norms, goals, values, interpersonal relationships, teaching and learning practices, and organizational structure. And a positive school climate fosters youth development and learning that supports those positive life outcomes for our students. when we talk about school climate improvement, we're engaging in a cyclical exercise, and the actual administration of the surveys puts us in this stage 2 portion, where we've gathered that data and we're looking now to interpret the results. From there, we go into action planning, implementing our action plan, reevaluating, and then coming back around to perhaps having to gather some additional data. So again, the inventory was presented to the students, the school personnel, and to families. There were 3 different surveys that were administered. And looking at this, it really does provide an in-depth profile of the school community in particular areas. And it does take a look at the multi-dimensional components of a school climate. And it helps us to understand how each of these groups, parents, students, and staff, perceive the school environment. So this just sort of gives you the deeper dive into what these dimensions of school climate look like. So there's a category of safety, teaching and learning, interpersonal relationships, the institutional environment, social media, and then there are some components that are specific to staff. So I'll have Mrs. Scott join me here in these next few slides. This is an overview of the participation in the survey, the percentage of folks that completed the survey in each category at each school.
Thank you, Dr. Burnham. You want me to take over from here?
Absolutely.
Okay. So this particular set of data shows the mostly the combined district point scales, and there are several slides that also break it out per building. Each principal has access to their own building scores, so they could take a deeper dive, and they're going to talk about that a little later. Something important here is that they consider individual dimension scores below 2.5 to be negative, and any scores above 3.5 positive. Scores between 2.5 and 3.5 are neutral. So by separated out by elementary student, middle high school student, our school personnel, and then families, you can see that we had positive scores in general, and then the scores that were in darker blue are those considered to be neutral. We did not ask the elementary students about social inclusion, which is why that's missing. Some of the highlights are that elementary students are more positive across the dimensions than middle high school students. That is not something that was unexpected. Because perceptions are higher in elementary school and generally decline as students get older due to many factors, including grades, greater need for social acceptance, and a stronger focus on academic needs. Some of the other highlights, safety rules and norms received the highest score across all populations with the exceptions of parents and guardians. You can see the breakdown here with elementary, middle, high school students, school personnel, and family. The sense of social emotional security and social media were in the neutral range for all populations with the exception of elementary school students, and social and civic learning in the positive range for all populations with the exception of middle and high school students are some of the other highlights. This slide shows the overall score for So middle high school students would be the lighter orange, elementary students, school personnel and family, but all in the positive range across the board. And then this is a breakdown by school. And like I said, the principals have spent some time really looking into their own data and the dimensions of each. These are also the overall scores from each school for students, personnel, and families. And here, Lunenburg Primary School personnel and families have the highest overall scores. All populations, with the exception of students at Lunenburg High School, are in the positive range. This breaks down just the high school from the middle school, since high school and middle school were combined on the previous slide, and then Turkey Hill separate for student scores across the schools. And we did have, as you saw on one of the earlier slides, a really good turnout of student responses, though our staff and staff responses weren't as high, and family responses the lowest across the board. Some of the other highlights of that slide are that with middle and high school students in the neutral range for sense of social emotional security, again, safety rules and norms highest across the board. Social support adults and social support students are all in the positive range there, which is a clear indication that students feel like they have supportive relationships with staff members and their peers there.
I usually have to pause on my screen share because my advance is not working at the moment.
There we go. So as you saw in kind of the cycle, we're in the evaluation, and then they give us some action steps and planning tools. And one of the steps they want us to take is to take a close look at making meaning. I think I'm going to turn it over to the principals here to talk about their individual making meaning for these scores.
Thank you, Annika. Chad Adams, primary school principal. The biggest theme for staff that stood out fell into the leadership category. And that dealt with open communication, accessible administration as some of the key components that came up from that. It's a little strange if you go back and look at the positivity rate from the staff in the school. So as part of some conversations that will be ongoing in the next couple of weeks, we'll be looking at the leadership, the qualities of that leadership. Well, what specifically are people concerned about, or what caused the ratings to be that way? You know, what are we missing as administrators in the building that we can do better to make people feel that leadership is a little bit little more solid than what's showing up in the scores for leadership. It really wasn't low, but it was the next lowest, one of the next lowest items for us. Again, it confirms what I already know. I mean, there's been conversations in the building with individual teachers and grade levels. Some of it really talks about communication. Some of the leadership piece speaks to communication, and we've had those discussions. I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. Overall, for our parents and our teachers, the social, emotional security and physical safety in the building was the highest rated areas, which is really uplifting for us. We try to spend a lot of time working with our youngest population on teaching rules, procedures, processes that ensure safety, number one, and then make it a safe environment, number two, for the kids, so that they all feel that they're welcome and they're not concerned about going to school. Not perfect by any means. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we really work hard at it, and I'm glad that the survey showed that some of that's coming through. Again, potential areas to improve. The leadership piece, I'm going to wrap back around with communication. When we originally looked at the data, social media came up for the primary school, and I had to look at that a couple of times. What does that mean? And that question for us really dealt with, student use of social media and cyberbullying and those types of issues. Whereas I was thinking it was more along the lines of like our use of social media, which I also know we need to work on based on conversations with the SAC about my school advisory council with the data. So, I mean, that's definitely an area that we can improve on as far as social media communications too. So obviously our PBIS that we've tried to put in place, the SEL classes that we have in place, the fact that we have check-ins and check-outs informally at this point in our building with some students who may have struggles during the day. I think these are all really point to showing that these are the things that we're doing to have those scores, to influence those scores. And I think it's really, I'm really happy that it did show up. Again, questions that the data raised. Again, it goes back to that leadership and communication piece for me, and I won't get too far into it, but it's similar to what I had in some my SWOT analysis, which I'll talk about in a little more detail a little bit later on. But
thanks, Mr. Adams. Next up is the Champaign.
Good evening, everyone. Heidi Champagne, Turkey Hill Elementary School. Thank you for having me. In our climate and culture survey, I was fortunate to be able to process through it a little bit with my school advisory council. One of the things we noticed is that in terms of participation rates, the parent rate was particularly low at 18%. The staff participation rate was at about a 35%. But the student rate was happily at an 82% rate. And we tried to talk about even what that meant and how that impacted the way that we should look at the results. So for us, one of the things that stands out is in terms of the student responses, both a strength and an area of focus was safety, right? So feeling that the school clearly communicates rules about teasing and violence, and we have clear and consistent norms in enforcement with adult intervention. The students gave us a very high rating on that. But just as Mr. Adams mentioned, and actually that surprised me a little, that it reached down to the primary school as well, an area of focus is social media. But 100%, we have been experiencing that more and more. This spring is student use of texting or other social media apps where they can communicate with each other after school hours, but what is said in those circumstances comes into school with their feeling then of not feeling safe or not wanting to come to school because of what was said outside of school. So I think that jumps into how does this data relate to efforts within your school? I think that's really an area that we need to focus on is training, education for both students and parents about the implications of using social media at such a young age and our concerns about that. So let's see. In terms of confirming what we already know, staff and students both talked about as an area of strength, social support for students, caring relationships for students with adults, and including high expectations for students and adults' willingness to listen to students and get to know them as individuals. So that was happy that students feel supported by their teachers here in this area, and that the teachers certainly expressed a strength of relationships between them on their teams, with their paras, amongst the adults in the building. So that's happy news. Let's see. Questions the data raises. I think one of the areas of weakness, just like Mr. Adams mentioned, was under leadership. And so it really raises questions for what do I need to improve in that? And I talked a little bit with the SAC about that. Is it having a greater clarity of vision and being able to communicate that successfully? Or what else is it? And so that certainly does raise some important questions, because I read over and over again how important a healthy leadership is to the climate and culture of a building and how it affects every outcome. And so I'm certainly look forward to examining that more closely. Strengths, potential areas. How does the data relate to other efforts within our school? I think it reinforces, again, I'm going to quote Mr. Adams as the use of the SEL special and hiring that guidance counselor who offers the SEL down at the primary school and at our school. Now for all of our students using the Trails to Wellness program, I think that just reinforces the need for that. And as I mentioned, suggests really as an area of focus to look for ways that we can provide some further education for children and opportunities for parents in terms of the social media.
Thank you, Mrs. Champagne.
Sure, thank you.
Turn it over to Mr. Santry.
Good evening, Tim Santry, Principal, Lunenburg Middle High School. I like how that sounds. That's the first time I think I said that. So really, what stands out, there's two things that really stand out, not just in the middle high school data, but maybe in the district data. And Annika or Dr. Burnham, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the strongest scores district-wide were the safety and security of our learning environments. And I think ever since I've been a principal is that we've always said that that's our major focus, is to create an environment where kids feel safe to learn and grow. And if you have that foundation, if you've created that work, we can build upon the other scores that may need improvement. Another thing that stuck out to me district-wide is that I don't believe we had a score that fell within the negative range. We had some that fell within that neutral range, which means there is room for improvement, but we had no glaring score of something that was that needed to be addressed quickly in a quick manner. So those are all positive things. You know, one of our scores that we need to improve upon, and it kind of makes sense, is that social and civic learning. and with students having an interrupted in-person learning for 20 months, it might stand to reason that their social learning might have suffered. And I think that the district and our schools have done a good job, as we have talked about with the Trails to Wellness and our positions that we have placed into support students in those areas. I think that's important to continue as we move forward. And Chad spoke about it, Ms. Champagne spoke about it. It's that social media piece. I was talking to the middle school leadership team today, and it is just, we asked students for 22 months to communicate in only one way, and that was through a phone or a Chromebook or on an app or by texting. And then we invited them back into school and decided we were going to tell them that's not the way they can communicate anymore for 6 hours a day. So I would imagine that social media piece, or feeling safe around that, is some place that we can improve. It relates to the efforts, I think, that Dr. Burnham has done an outstanding job of kind of putting the positions into place that we were going to need when we came back in August with our guidance counselors and our social workers and our increased administrators. We knew that there was going to be a social emotional impact. What I look forward to, and maybe the data is going to be able to show this, is to eventually move from a triage piece of social emotional work, which it seems we're doing now, into that more of an educational stance, where we'll be able to kind of educate around social emotional issues. But we've got to take things one step at a time and treat kids for where they are in our building. But I think that's how we could move forward.
Anything else, Mr. Sandry?
I think that's all for right now. Let's see if any questions.
All right, so we'll move on to the next section. A little bit of discussion on a SWOT analysis that was done in each school. So what is a SWOT analysis? When we say that, we're talking about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, but I think that we like to reframe the threats as barriers, potential barriers. This analysis is a tool that can be used to gather perspectives and data on internal and external factors and perceptions, so that we can be aware of those things as an organization as we're planning for future initiatives or growth for the district or the school. So why do we have our schools participate in this? Again, we're focused on working on school climate and culture. This is a great tool to gather perspectives. And this information is going to be used along with the results of those climate surveys that we just reviewed to help us develop district and school plans and goals, and likely find its way into action plans as part of the strategy for continuous improvement as well. So a little bit about the themes that emerged in each of our schools. So we'll turn it back over to Mr. Adams to talk a little bit about the things that came through when he did this exercise with his staff at the primary school.
Thank you. We had the staff complete this as grade level groups, complete this survey. And it was basically asking about what are the strengths of the school culture, what are the strengths of the school programming, same thing for weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and barriers. We took all that data, put it into a chart and then gave each one of the individual responses we received a category. We tried to make it a broader category so we could try to find the trends. Now, what you see before you, these were the major trends that came out from analyzing the data. There were some others, but these were the ones that were with the highest responses. There were some singletons. There was a lot of COVID-related concerns as far as weaknesses and threats to barriers and things like that. So, we'll address those with the staff in some upcoming meetings. One of the greatest strengths in my building, it always has been ever since I've been there, is the staff collaboration, the staff support, the staff cooperation. It's a really strong feeling in my building. Anybody who's worked in my building or been in my building knows that it's there. And it is true. They will work with each other. They will support each other. They'll help each other through daily things in school, and also provide some additional supports to people who need it for things outside of school. So it's a really tight-knit community. It really is. So that's one of the greatest strengths, and I feel like we can build off of that, but we got to get to the communication piece first. So as you can see, opportunities, communication, weaknesses, communication, threats and barriers, communication, all similar to, points back for me to the leadership piece from the climate survey. A lot of the scores or a lot of the questions dealt with a communication piece for leadership. So we have our goal at the primary school. We have a goal. We have some idea of what direction we need to move in. The opportunities, communication, the CPT is a common planning time. I think a lot of what staff is looking for as far as communication is the opportunity to communicate with each other. Right now, we're working on piloting curriculums, and we're working on selecting curriculums. So a lot of that common planning time that's what it's being used for, and PD and the curriculums that we're already using at the beginning of the year. So we really didn't have the opportunity to use that to its fullest potential. And actually, I told my staff probably back in December, common planning time is actually, it's really a misnomer for us right now. It's really professional learning community at this point. So we have an opportunity with looking at scheduling next year to try to build in a little bit more of that common planning time, the way that staff has expressed concerns around it. And we will definitely be looking at that as we move forward. Weaknesses, communication, decisions, and processes. And I'm just going to go to threats and barriers to decisions and processes because it's the same thing. We looked at this, and the first question I asked Kevin White, my assistant principal, was like, what are we missing communication-wise? We have our guesses, as far as where this came from, but until we go back and meet with each individual grade level and ask some clarifying questions and give them another opportunity to talk about specifically what we're missing for the communication piece, whether it be decisions or processes or decisions. I'm not going to be able to verify what I think it is. A lot of the decisions and a lot of the processes have changed this year. It's not that we didn't have them before. We've had a lot of the processes we have in place, but we've streamlined them, or we tweaked them to make them more efficient. And any change, with all the changes that we've had this year for us, I think that is where a lot of this concern from staff has come from. But again, until I go back and we actually have those individual or grade level conversations with people, we won't know for sure. But given some of the individual conversations I've had with staff, I think we're pretty right. I think we have it right. It's going to be about processes and things like that. and decision making. There are many opportunities in the building for staff to contribute and provide feedback and provide input and help make decisions, from the BHST, the TST groups that we have, the TST committee we have, the BILT, the Building Instructional Leadership Team. So, you know, I'm wondering again, what are we missing? What's the disconnect? There is a lot of, you know, Kevin and I, we have a regular check-in we send out to staffs so they can fill out a Google spreadsheet, and it pops up with an email and says, I need to check in with you. You know, our doors are open all the time. You know, so we need to go back and circle back with staff and figure out what the disconnect is for the communications pieces. So, and before any of this goes into, like Dr. Burnham was talking about, before any of these, before we develop any action steps around this, and you know, we need to do that investigatory work for finding out what really is the root issue, root cause, before I put them into a goal in my school improvement plan or even action steps under one of the existing goals. So.
Thank you, Mr. Adams.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Champagne.
So my esteemed middle high school colleague has admonished me twice in the last 10 minutes to make sure not to ramble. So let me see how succinct I can be here. Our staff considers their rapport with each other and their capacity to work together as the #1 strength in our school, and I certainly agree. They, in terms of weaknesses, they see a lack of consistent communication as a concern. The older building, right? We were built in 1969, and so we have shortcomings that our other buildings do not, as being an area of weakness, and the sub situation, especially in the COVID years. Our biggest opportunities lie in the super exciting potential of a new reading and math curriculum spearheaded by our lovely curriculum director and literacy coordinator. We just think that's a wonderful opportunity for us to have our curriculum consistent, unified across K-5. And our threats or barriers, funding, funding can be relatively uneven. Some years it seems to be wonderful, and in other years it seems to be more of a challenge. And I'm sorry, Dr. Burnham, I'm not sure if there's anything below funding. I can't see anything. Oh, there we go. And the possibility of burnout or low morale. The COVID years have been very, very, very difficult. I think it's difficult to overstate that. And have caused real challenges for some of our staff. So those were the perceived threats.
Thank you, Mrs. Champagne. Mr. Santry.
So, yeah, and Miss Champagne, you're not supposed to pull back the curtain and let people know what's going behind the scenes, but thank you for that shout out. Lunenburg Middle School has our SWOT analysis. We are going to complete that in May. So we have kind of two different formats. So for the middle school, we're going to do ours in May and then again in October. We're going to compare strengths and weaknesses and see if they have improved or continue to need improvement in any way, but we have not done our SWOT analysis for the middle school so far, but I do believe Dr. Burnham has penciled me in for June to report out on that first SWOT analysis that we're going to do in May. We were able to do the analysis at the high school. I believe this was our first full faculty activity at the high school, which, Mr. Maiku and Mr. Duffy helped me set up, and I thought went rather well. We broke the faculty into smaller groups that weren't in departments, so maybe we could get a little bit different of perspectives. And we did it as like a carousel where smaller groups would be writing different pieces around instruction and around culture, what we felt those strengths and weaknesses are. And I believe as the strengths were at the primary school and the elementary school, strengths listed are our fantastic faculty and our students, and how both of those groups are dedicated, strong teacher relationships with high standards and rigorous curriculum. Some groups noticed that we had an increase in support for staff and students and an increased use in technology, and listed as a strength the access to club sports and activities. Some of the weaknesses that our faculty had pointed out are things that we've been talking throughout the year to school committee, as well as in my school advisory council and in our leadership and department head teams, is that our struggle to support students once they enter that tier 2 stage of support, in which we have taken action, and hopefully we'll have an interventionist to support those students where we've been struggling to provide that support. Some teachers, some faculty listed out rigidity, inability to be flexible as one of our weaknesses. Content, professional development, that's a very difficult piece to provide. Like I said, this was at the beginning of a 4th surge of coronavirus, so people were on edge, and they were concerned about teacher isolation, student disengagement, and another area of weakness that was identified by our faculty was some of our class sizes, which are probably the largest they have been at the high school in many years. Some classes in our foreign language wing up to 30, and then other classes in our history and ELA classes as high as 27. So those are larger numbers than they are usually accustomed to at the high school. The opportunities that were listed, right, is that there were a small, tight-knit community that cares for each other and a willingness to help each other get through. With the new resources that the district has provided us, we have opportunities with that technology piece. We have new electives. And this has been mentioned several times, so I did want to list it down, is they feel that if we had an opportunity for a late bus for students, both for extracurricular activities as well as extra help, that would be an opportunity for students and the building to move forward. And some of our threats were ones that I'm wondering if were associated with our 4th surge, or are a product of the pandemic, or are they systemic problems at the high school that we need to address. So as we did this SWOT, and I believe it was October, I would like to do this again in May, and then we have a cross-reference to see if we still have similar answers. The best laid plans sometimes aren't achieved. I wanted to get our faculty back together and discuss the similarities of this SWOT, but I think completing another one and then bringing out the actual carousel paper that we did in October and just kind of compare those and see what similarities we have. But those threats were, the mental health piece, the social media, of course, in a pandemic, the increase in absences as we're asking students to stay home if they're sick, students not feeling like they fit in. So would really like to do a deep dive on that and work with our faculty around that piece. And that student apathy is sometimes teachers struggle with student participation on it doesn't seem to be a product of their ability or their mental health, or why isn't a student succeeding. So we're working on strategies to provide teachers to help those students that are presenting as apathetic. And then just the college pressure and the other pressure that high school students face every day, trying to work with an extremely talented faculty and asking them to be, put more tools in their toolbox to help some of our students succeed. So that's what came out of our SWOT analysis. I'm interested in a follow-up one to report back to you what the similarities and differences were.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So now we'll talk a little bit about relationship mapping. So this exercise is where initially this first activity is with the staff and trying to identify students that staff members have a connection with. Something more than just, oh, this is a student in my class. Something a little bit deeper than that. So in each building, we've been working on doing this activity with our staff as well. So Mr. Adams, I'll turn it over to you to talk a little bit about your experience with this and what your next steps are.
Thank you. Like Dr. Burnham said, we did a presentation to the staff at a faculty meeting about relationship mapping, provided an overview of what it was and how it would help us, possibly help our students, right? That's our long-term goal. So we completed the staff identification of connections. So basically we listed all the kids in each homeroom, and the teachers went in and we just put down our names next, and administrators too, put down our names next to the students. We had a stronger connection with, like Dr. Burnham said, than just they're in my class. So our next steps, we started looking at that data, and we started looking at students who didn't have, had like 2 or 1 connection. And those are the students that we're gonna kind of focus on and try to make sure that, there's another adult in the building that they can talk to at some point in time. So the staff kind of got a little anxious about this when we talked about check-ins. We had to go back and re-explain what the expectation for was a check-in with these students. In their minds, they were thinking it was a 20-minute out of my day kind of a thing. And it really wasn't. We went back and explained it, that it's, hi, how are you? How was your weekend? Did you go? Oh, I know you go horseback riding. Did you go horseback riding this weekend? How was that? Those types of questions. How are things? So at least you provide that opportunity of, if a student is struggling or there is something going on, they have that opportunity to talk to an adult, or at least share something positive too. Again, it's about just having another trusted adult in the building. We did it at every grade level. So kindergarten teachers actually went up through the 1st and 2nd grade classes also, because sometimes they have a stronger connection to some of those kids. Some of those kids will still come back and talk to them every now and then if they see them in the hallway. So that was really nice to see when you start putting all that together. Our next steps are to work with students. Stephanie Miller, the school adjustment counselor, I'll be working with her to develop a tool or a method to collect who students identify with as far as the staff goes. And then we're going to administer that, and then we'll analyze the student data with the staff. So we're going to take the 2 sets of data, the ones from the students and the ones from the staff, and put them side by side and have some discussions around what we find. And then after that, there's a little bit more to having those conversations with students. There may be some PD opportunities around that. So we want to kind of identify anything that we may possibly need as a building. And then I was thinking about doing this. We're going to have to do it again in the fall with the incoming kindergarten. We'll have some of the data from 1st and 2nd grade, from the kindergarten and 1st graders will be 1st and 2nd graders. But I definitely want to make sure that we're looking at that data on a regular basis, or those connections on a regular basis. And include those in our data cycles that we'll start working on next year as one of our data cycles with teachers. Obviously, any students that we identify that we can start making connections with now that are in second grade, we don't have a long opportunity with them. So that was one thing that I was concerned about, but I will definitely share this information with Mrs. Champagne. So she is aware. These are the kids that we identified that we needed to add some additional adult supports to. So just so you have that, those kids will be those students will be known going into Turkey Hill, so she won't have to do that again. So,
thank you, Mrs. Champagne.
So this was the first time that we did this exercise, relationship mapping. I was not familiar with it. I introduced it to my staff with a very, very brief video about identifying children with whom you felt you had a personal rapport or a strong personal connection to. What I noticed in the results is that every child was covered. Every child had 3 or 4 names next to it. So the reflection afterwards is, I understand how that happened, right? As a teacher, I would want to say that I knew all of my students in a personal way. I totally understand how that would happen. But then the curious part would be, how do students feel? And who did they identify as these adults in the building with whom they have strong rapport? So that's really what I'm interested in, is trying to find a way to get students to respond to that and who they would identify as a safe personal connection in the school. And then as a staff, can we look at the juxtaposition of those 2 collections of data and see how they compare, and what we might glean from that in terms of what does it mean to have a personal rapport with a student? What do we need to know about them in order for them to trust us enough to speak with us when they don't feel safe, when they encounter challenges?
Thank you. And Mr. Santry.
I have not completed this important work of relationship mapping with the middle high school yet. I have worked with Jamie Millett and creating a template on how we're going to get that work done. We've created a tool with a spreadsheet with the assistance of our social workers. We'll be getting that work done this May and then again in October. So once again, just like our SWOT analysis, we'll be able to cross-reference and identify any students that are lacking adult relationships. We'll be able to walk over that data from 8th to 9th grade, as well as 5th grade to 6th grade, and take a look at our trends and make sure that every student in our building has an adult that they can turn to. So I'm looking forward to that work.
So next steps from here relative to climate culture, we will come back and provide a report for any of the additional data that we gather between now and the end of the year for the school committee. And our work really is going to be to identify those areas for targeted action. What does all of this data tell us? What does it tell us holistically for the district level? What does it tell us for specific schools? How does it inform our goal setting, whether that's in district improvement goals or school improvement goals? What action steps do we need to develop? What action plans do we need to develop under our strategy for continuous improvement as it relates to our climate culture work moving forward? There's a lot of work going on. It's not all completed yet, but we are committed to this work and gathering the data from multiple perspectives because that's the nature of school climate and culture. It's there for everyone, and the different members in that environment may have different perceptions. We need to understand all of them in order to make some good decisions around what needs to be done to make sure that things feel good for all of the members of the community. So work is ongoing. It's good work. We're making progress. But we'll open it up now to your questions.
Sure thing. Does anyone on the committee have any questions? My screen is such I can't see everybody, so I'm looking for Ann. But no, I don't.
Sophie has.
Oh, Sophie.
Hi.
Good.
Yeah, sorry. I just have not a question, but a comment. Just Dr. Burnham and all of the principals, thank you so much for your always thorough, great work and coming and presenting all of it to us. I know we rarely have questions, and that's because you guys do such a great job. So thank you so much and keep up the good work.
Thank you. Anybody else? I would just make the comment that I know culture has been a major focus and concern since, a few years ago, we saw that there were so many high school students that didn't feel that they had a trusted adult they could go to. So I'm glad to see that this work is being done and being done so thoroughly, because it's definitely necessary work. So we thank you for that.
Thank you.
Mr. Scolambrini.
What do we think can be done to bring up the parents' response rates?
You know, it's interesting that you asked that, because we asked that question of the consultants that facilitated this survey for us. They're the ones that compiled all the data and gave us basically almost all of the slides in the slide deck that you saw this evening. And we asked the question, what should we make of a low participation rate amongst the parents? And they said, you had a good participation rate amongst the parents based on their work. But I think maybe over time, as parents come to see what we're doing with this information, they'll see a benefit. You know, it's hard to say. We don't want to make an assumption and say, oh, well, parents must think everything's okay and they don't need to complete the survey. Because I'm not sure that I'm comfortable making an assumption about the participation rate at this point. But we'll see, because the plan is to administer this survey again to see if there's been any change with any of the effort that we're making to address some of the feedback that came through this initial administration. Who knows, maybe we'll get a stronger participation rate next go around. You know, the other thing is I think it's sort of an age-old challenge for us in education. Parents are super busy. They're super busy. You know, they juggle an awful lot. And, you know, if they don't have a high level of concern, is there that motivation to sit down and spend some time? This wasn't a 5-question survey. You know, this was a bit of a commitment to make it through. How many people maybe initiated the process and didn't complete it? I'm not sure. But again, continuing to put this information out, you know, the ways in which we're using the data, the importance of getting this input from our parents. And honestly, we didn't have 100% participation on our staff either. This is super important. You know, when we look at the information that came through the SWOT analysis, you know, or even the climate survey, you know, Mr. Adams talked about it. Communication, communication, communication. I think that, you know, we have to be sure to message for our staff. This is an opportunity for you to communicate and provide us data. Please participate in the survey. We want to hear from you. So I think we just need to continue with that message to staff, to families. We're doing this because we truly want to gather their input. It's hard to make decisions to improve the district when you don't have a really high level of participation in giving you that input. You know,
is there any way to tie it to like when we do these surveys for legal education stuff, you have to turn in the survey in order to get credit for your class. So everybody turns them in. If you like had the parents, and I know people hate this when you call like a service and they're like, stay on the line to take a survey. But when they meet with the teacher at like parent teacher conference, say, you know, like have the teacher say, you know, here, be sure to take this survey. It'll provide us with data. And then the other idea I had was, what if there was like a giveaway associated with, so that everybody's survey entry becomes like, you know, you get like a $50 Amazon or Whole Foods, or now they're the same thing, iTunes gift card or something, so that there's like an incentive to do it. I don't know. I mean, I just feel like the participation in town government is low. The participation in the school committee process is low, and this process is low. And I think that like that's the first step in figuring out what the problems are, if there are any.
Well, that's the key, right? If there are any. And I can tell you that in the 4 years I've been here, things that are really super concerning to parents, sure, they do come out, they do participate, they do attend forums. I've held many forums where I've had one attendee. I think one evening, Mr. Scuombrini, it was your wife that was the sole attendee for a parent forum. You know,
I remember this.
Right? So I don't know. What is that takeaway? Because when we have other issues that are of high importance and high value to parents, they do come out. I mean, hundreds.
Like the COVID mask mandate. Yeah.
We had 168 people at one point on that meeting the night that we were making the decision about. So I think the communication is out there. People know, like they all knew that we were going to make that decision that night. We push out our school committee meeting agendas to the families on Mondays when they officially post up at town hall. It seems to me that people, by and large, have a lot of information, and they really, they do find a way to come to participate for things that, it would appear, for things that have a lot of importance to them. I don't know, maybe that's an assumption too. I don't know. Other thoughts from my admin team about, you know, historic participation at the building level for different meetings that you've had. I know that we've, in recent years, we've had Zoom drop-ins to explain the iReady assessment, the data that comes from it, literacy support. Other thoughts from the admin team about parent participation?
I do think that the length of a survey is impactful. How I mean, even for you and me, right? It matters if it's a short survey or a long survey, whether we're going to participate. I remember pre-COVID, I tried to have a weekly feedback for parents that I think every week I was sending out something. And initially I had a pretty good response rate, but it was very brief, and they could like, I think, even text back their responses. It was a really quick sort of thing. But yeah, you're right. Like the iReady meetings that we've had, maybe three participants. So it really does depend on the topic as well.
Dr. Burnham, I think if you have multiple students at multiple levels in the district, I think that might have played a factor in some of our response rates. You know, especially with some of my families that have kids at almost every building. You know, you're filling out the same survey with those questions, and it was I think it was challenging when you look at those questions for four separate students. So I think you know, maybe trying to find a way to help some of the families with that might you know, because I had people call me saying, I'm giving up, I'm done. Okay.
You know, and the challenge in this particular case with this particular survey is that this is a tool that's been developed and has been shown as a valid measurement of school climate. So we really shouldn't sort of, monkey around with the tool that's been developed and demonstrated to be a valid measure of school climate. Because when we start messing around with it, we're potentially now impacting the validity of the survey. It's a challenge for sure. Mr. Santry, you were going to say something?
Just a real quick comment. Mr. Scalabrini, I have seen that strategy at other schools where they have set up Chromebooks or laptops and asked parents to take the survey on the way out. But as Chad and Dr. Burnham touched upon it, we had to make so many decisions in such a short time during that pandemic. There might be a case of burnout for surveys at this point. I hate to say it, even though the information is critical and crucial, many families having to fill out 3 or 4 for every, questionnaire, it might have served as some burnout. So hopefully we'll have a bounce back after that and we get on this other side of the pandemic.
Tough situation all around, I'm thinking of a survey that I bailed on this week because it was too long. So I get it. It wasn't as important as my kids' education. That's a little different, but just the same, I get it. It's a tough one.
It's a lot.
But thank you for the work that you do in this, because it is important. And
we are going to be putting out a homegrown, shorter communication survey to families, because that is information that's really important to us to get. What kinds of communication work best for you? What is working? What's not working? Suggestions for improvement, like all of that in multiple levels, district level, school committee, news, school-based, down to the classroom level. So there will be a more abbreviated, homegrown survey to get us some more targeted information specific to the practices that we've been engaged in here in the district around communication. It'll be helpful to know what they find to be helpful and what's not so helpful, and how we can make some improvements in that regard too. So hopefully they'll answer the shorter survey when we send that out in a couple of weeks.
Okay. If that's all we have on that topic, I think we'll move on. The next one is MASC Equity Workshop dates. And I asked to put this on because as part of our goals, we had talked about doing a workshop on equity. And so I went to the MASC website. They do not have a packaged workshop that I could say we can all watch like we did the superintendent evaluation workshop. They don't happen to have one of those. So I would have to ask Dorothy if someone on staff gives one, and then we'd have to figure out a date for them to come out and do it. So before I made the initial, can you come and do it? I thought I might have an idea on dates, or, if this is something that we don't think we can get in before the end of the school year, should we wait till like August, or how we want to do it. My initial thought was hitting the Wednesdays that we don't meet, since most of us don't have commitments every Wednesday because we have to be here for a lot of them. I just didn't know what thoughts people had regarding this, and is this still a priority for the group? So, comments?
I think the days will ultimately depend on, I know Brian's probably in my situation, and maybe even Tony, sports are just starting. And so all of our kids' schedules, we're still waiting for baseball schedules and soccer schedules. So certainly if this is something as a group everyone wants to do, I'm sure we can make it work. But I wouldn't go as far to say that all Wednesdays are available right now, since we still haven't gotten our schedules.
So maybe this is something that should be put off for the next go round or the go round after, to determine once the sports schedules come out. I forgot about that because I don't have to go to those games. So I do go to a few, but if I'm not there, it's not imperative. So I don't know, what do you think? Should we table this for now and come back at it? What are your thoughts in general about the workshop? Is that something that we still want to do? Mr. Leighton?
Thanks. In regards to the workshop, I guess if we did do it, I think it might be better to get the MASC dates that they're available, because I think sometimes they can be pretty busy themselves too. And if any of the dates work, then we could do it. But honestly, I was more open to just having a discussion about what we wanted to do with the equity goal and some other options besides the MASC presentation or overview. I thought we could have some good discussions between ourselves too. I had seen even a policy from another district that I was interested in that we could discuss too.
Just a thought, Carol and Laura. We did meet with some consultants around that equity audit that was part of a school committee goal as well. I think there's a possibility that depending on what direction we go, you might be able to have that consultant come do a presentation targeted to school committee once a decision's made. It's not on the agenda for this evening to have that discussion and a decision around that because we're still waiting on proposals.
Right.
But we should have those for the next meeting. So potentially, you know, if you're so inclined, I could reach out to see if consultants are available to do workshops for school committees in the evening.
I think that first person we met with specifically said that she would like to meet with the school committee. So if all goes to plan, I think I couldn't imagine a better presentation coming from anywhere else, to be honest.
So should we set up then as a agenda item, a discussion around what we want to do with the equity goal and revisiting the goal in general. And if Brian has information you wanted to share with us, maybe we should do that. And then as we figure out who the consultant ends up being, then after we've had the discussion, we can decide if that's the direction we want to go in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mr. Schoenbrini?
One thing that I wanted to add, I did not realize, this is because I'm new and uneducated in this area, but I thought MASC was like a group of volunteers, like school committee. I did not realize that they were like paid professionals that do these presentations. I found the presentation that I went to a couple of weeks ago, I thought it was not very good. The legal information they gave was just like completely wrong. And my concern would be that given that the equity component will touch on Title VI and Title IX, that I would prefer to not use them as a provider. They went more than an hour and a half over the budgeted time. The presentations were simply people reading pre-prepared scripts. The questions that they took from the crowd, they did not answer them. I mean, I don't know about the education stuff, but I know about the law stuff, and they just got them wrong. And so like, I had a very strong negative reaction, and I did not give them that feedback because I thought they were all volunteers. And then it turns out that, you know, the one guy makes like $180,000 a year. And I was like, this is crazy. That was terrible. So I would not use them for anything, but that's just me. I mean, if other people found them useful, then I'm happy to sit through another presentation, but I would definitely prefer another source.
Well, I'm sorry that you had that kind of experience.
That's all right.
Well, not really, but it is what it is. I mean, we can't change it. We have had good luck with our local person, Dorothy Presser, and the MASC representative that came out to talk about Chapter 70 was certainly quite knowledgeable. But The people you ran into that day certainly weren't. And it's something to look at. So why don't we just put this on as an additional agenda item? And then Brian, if you wanna bring the information you want to look at, and then we'll look at our goal as a whole and then decide where we want to go. Is that what you're thinking?
I could send the policy that I saw to Dr. Burnham and she could disperse it out to everyone just so everybody has it so we can be prepared to discuss it.
Yeah, that seems like a reasonable approach. Yep, I would be fine with that. Okay, why don't we consider that we'll do that way. Okay, old business, civics update.
This is where I will invite Mrs. LeBlanc back to the discussion, as well as Mrs. Stevenson and Mrs. Foyle.
Sure. I'm going to screen share our presentation, and then Warren is going to start us off, I think.
And I apologize. I was in a more regular setting. I'm now on the floor of my son's room. It got late and it's bedtime, so we're on the floor reading Llama Llama Nighty Night right now. But we can do this quick because I think Lisa and Mary actually doing most of it. But so this is about the civics requirement, and actually, if Lisa, if you just hit the next slide. So back in 2018, Governor Baker and the legislature, they passed a law and he signed the law into effect to, as it states here, all Massachusetts students will be educated in the histories of the Commonwealth, the United States, and the world. They will be prepared to make informed civic choices and assume their responsibility for strengthening equality, justice, and liberty in and beyond the United States. That included both a requirement in the 8th grade that all 8th grade students across the state take a civics, full year civics course, and also provided a requirement that all 8th grade students will complete a civics project, and all high school students, at least once in high school, will complete a civics project. So at the high school level, that's what we focused on, is the high school requirement, which is for all students to complete a civics project. We created an elective, a half-year course that students can take to fulfill that project called Civic and Community Engagement. And over the past 2 school years, 100 students have taken the Civic and Community Engagement course, 60 juniors and 40 sophomores. The class of 2023 is the first class for which this is a graduation requirement. So that's actually our current juniors. So we are well on pace to have all our juniors meet that. Our classes usually range between 100 and 110 kids by the time they graduate, and we already have 60 juniors having taken it. And on the slide, it does state that 94 students are signed up for the Civic Community Engagement course for next school year, 2022, 2023. So we're going to have plenty of room to be able to get those final juniors taking it, as well as the upcoming juniors and sophomores being able to at least start that process. Also, there are 12 students who will be fulfilling the civics project by taking English 4 CSL honors. That is a course that had already existed prior to this requirement, and because they already did a civics project, it was natural to allow that to also count towards their fulfillment of the project. So numbers-wise, we're looking really good, and we have been able to handle the numbers with running 5 sections of civic community engagement to try to get those 92, 94 students spending on the year to fulfill the requirements.
Okay, so I'm Mary Foyle, and I teach most of the civics sections at the high school, as well as the English for community service learning class. There's so much I could say. I could talk all night. I won't, because in my head is the email back and forth that we had with Warren, Lisa, and myself. And Warren was like, brief, and these are the topics that we're supposed to be talking about as reminders. So professional development opportunities. I actually was I have a lot tagged on a bookmark on my bar on my website, and a kid was asking me about something today, and I hit it, and I sat there for a minute as it just kept scrolling down because I've bookmarked so much, because I've been teaching this about 6 years. But my initial foray into it was under the guise of community service learning. and they have a lot of similarities to it. And so I was able to connect those. So what's on here is actually more recent opportunities that I've been able to go through and then able to get those sources out to other people. I somehow, in the first summer of the pandemic, hit this Cato Institute, which is actually a libertarian institute. It's very interesting, but they're really trying to push civic atmosphere and civic discussion in communities and focusing on high schools. Oh, Lisa, can you go back? Thanks. And so I had the opportunity last summer to actually go to Cato for an institute, and the networking and the professional opportunities are just amazing within there. And so I've been able to move into, like, every Monday we do something called Both Sides, where we look at an issue and we look at, I hate being narrowed down to binary concerns, but it's kind of what our political system is. It's like, we looked at the middle class last week. This week we're looking at minimum wage. We've looked at, should college debt be erased? So civic issues that the government is looking at. So Cato does a great job with that. The Mass Civics Fellowship is a great opportunity for anyone teaching civics. I happen to be a fellow this year. I was really surprised I got chosen. As an English teacher, I feel like I'm an interloper in all of these. And they offer a lot of workshops, especially for teachers who are just starting for what they can be doing. There's a lot of resources for 8th grade. And so something as a fellow that we're looking at is, how do we create more resources for high school students, and the resources being different than the 8th grade resources. In fact, Lisa and I were texting during this. I was like, we need to sit down and meet, because I know I'm using some of their original 8th grade resources. So I don't want to double up on that. And then this year, and I attended it last year too, I hope it remains online because it would just be so hard to get to in person. But Maths Civics Week has existed. And there were just so many workshops. In fact, 2 of them I saw gave me ideas for civics classes with a lens, one with a journalism lens to it, and another one with a history is happening here to it, where students could look into some local history. So there's stuff I have to work a bit more on. One class we were actually able to Zoom in with quite a few other schools, but to Justice Sonia Sotomayor, and she spoke for about 45 minutes to students. It was neat to be one of the schools Zooming into that. We got to wave for a second. And so there are some just really good opportunities in there. It just takes some digging and looking, and I try to get those opportunities out to other people as well. I wrote down notes tonight to do some kind of survey workshop, because my students do a lot of surveys as well. And I am working on some tools where we maybe can have better access to surveys. Mr. Santry doesn't know that yet, but we have a conversation coming up. I think I have some things to help him getting bombarded in that as well. Lisa, if you wouldn't mind going on. Thank you. So all that PD really learns to what I'm hoping are rich student experiences. I say to my students constantly, this work in this class is really my own civics project going on. And I try to use what I'm thinking. I say all the time, oh, next year I'm going to do this differently, or give me feedback on this, because I want them to know that these projects, they're not linear, that you're constantly reflecting. And in fact, this year I've built in a lot more reflection. And so I'm constantly changing what I'm doing. And I hope that they see that as an example. It's also interesting for me to balance the difference between what my English class is doing and what my civics class is doing. The projects are the same, but there are different expectations. So under research, these are all student examples. It's really too small to see. But you have an example of an infographic that a student did. I actually think Mrs. Archambault, that's a student who you met with, and Dr. Burnham, I think you met with her as well, where my senior honors class has to do a 10-page research paper. The civics class, the research is still important, but they show it as an infographic. I do have students write down proposals, and they have to revise their proposals, because it's something trying to create those real world experiences that they'll have. And so there's example proposals, and I try to push them to have timelines. At the end of the process for their final exam, they do a presentation on what their project was about, and they have a reflection slide as part of that, where I'm asking, did you learn new skills? What if you pulled in from other classes that you used here? So really that I'm trying to push thinking, as basic as that sounds, that's really my goal, research and thinking. And then the product project, this group here with this involved, they've created a whole website so that it will go live with students, so students and community can know what kind of volunteer opportunities exist and to whom to reach out for those volunteer opportunities. So I'm growing constantly. I know a lot of you, my students have reached out to you. That's still a process. I'm reaching out to PD resources of my own of how do I better streamline that process. Very concerned about weighing down what we call our community partners. Mr. Beardmore, I saw that you were online. I have some students digging into financial stuff, and if they haven't sent you an email, they're about to. I know Mr. Cassidy's already gotten that email. So I'm the PD is an ongoing. And at this point, I'm looking at, for myself, other resources because of the state project having just started and me having taught it for a while, I'm beyond some of the initial. And so now I'm trying to bridge out to other agencies that will have information that could be PD that we could further build these experiences for students. I'm all set, Lisa.
Thanks, Mary. And Mary and I are excited. We believe it's moving forward, but it looks like I'm going to be taking one of those 5 classes of the civic and community engagement next year, as what I believe I told Mr. Santry today will be the last time I teach a new class for a very long time. But we look forward to working between the 8th grade and high school civics projects. So just like Mary said, there are different expectations for them, but they have a lot of similarities. So it's going to be a nice crossover. We are just starting in 8th grade, the project portion, because we plan on doing it because it follows our curriculum. We plan on doing it in the 4th quarter, which is exactly where we are right now. So iCivics is, I also could talk on here about how much I love iCivics forever. iCivics PD is fantastic. We are so lucky we have that as a free resource. Massachusetts educators particularly are so lucky that we have our own website segment on iCivics that coordinates everything with Massachusetts state standards. And David Buchanan, who runs Massachusetts iCivics, is available all the time. We communicate frequently. He does PD. He invites us to everything. The common planning that the 8th grade civics teachers do on Wednesday afternoons, we have taken part in some iCivics PD during the day. During that class period, it doesn't always line up, but we've been able to connect with them, some Q&As and project prep. Outside of iCivics, but working in connection with them, the Democratic Knowledge Project out of Harvard University, fantastic. Of course, it's out of Harvard University. They are picking some really excellent speakers. They have a high quality level that they're looking for. And I did some PD with them, I think 2 weeks ago. And we really focused on the nonpartisan part of these civics projects. So for anyone who's listening, that is a really important component of this. They are nonpartisan civics projects, and students don't always come up with project ideas that are nonpartisan. So we worked a lot on some strategies for helping educators help guide students in making a project of interest, a nonpartisan project of interest. That's like some tricky stuff we have to navigate. And we're gonna need to work together, work with other educators on how that works.
Sorry,
best.
Could you say that again?
Oh no, sorry.
I'm having trouble hearing you.
Oh gosh, okay. My watch went bananas. So here is the 8th grade civics education project process. We really need to do the curriculum first. So in 8th grade, because it's not a class focused on the project, it's a project that's a part of the class. In this sense, we've covered the founding of the United States, branches of government, citizenship, elections. We've connected with local leaders. Mr. Franco came in and visited with us. Mr. Jeffries came in, both from the select board. The kids asked a ton of questions that they pre-planned. Excellent presentations. They are our liaisons. We do not want to overwhelm our community leaders, like Mary said, with emails from students. Also, we are really cognizant that our 8th grade students should not independently be reaching out to a bunch of adults that they do not know. So we want to make sure we're really careful about how we guide them to connect with outside sources. And that's something we're working with other educators from other districts on too, because we have run across that. So the last part, step 3, which is what we're going to do post-April vacation, it will be to work on the projects, and there'll be group projects likely for us. Students do have the opportunity to work independently, but it is a lot of work. And the emphasis in 8th grade is that they work on local community projects in their own school or their local community with others. So it really is a little bit of a different expectation than what the high school is. And we're just working on those skills of navigating local government and having students understand what their student voice is. We have iCivics provides a workbook, which we are super happy that we purchased a few copies of to help guide us in guiding our students through this. We haven't done them yet. They're brand new. They just came into me the other day. I took some pictures of them. Helps us identify decision makers in town, helping them narrow down questions, concerns, issues, the art of an interview. They had a great one on survey making, how you pick questions for a survey, what format you do, all of those things students have never done before. And just ending with this, Mary had put this slide in. This is really what it's all about. This is what, the legislature voted this in for, is because democracy is not a state, it's an act. We are supposed to encourage students to do civics, not just learn civics. So that's our presentation.
I will say too, I forgot to say this, but my classes are a very open door. Come in anytime. Well, let us know, but come in anytime to see what the students are doing. I love to hear what other people think of it. Some projects are really wonderful. Some projects aren't. But I think it's really good for students to then, when they're talking to other adults, they sometimes come to the realization of, oh, maybe I should be doing this. And others, a lot of them really take hold of it and are really proud of the work that they're doing. So anytime you want to come in, just let us know. I'm sure we can make that work, because they really are doing some fabulous, fabulous work.
Thank you very much.
Any questions? Okay.
Does anyone have any questions for the civics crew? I think I'm so happy to see this in the schools the way it is. And I was so glad that the state voted it in. As I'm sure everybody knows, my kids are older and neither one of them received civics in school. And my daughter was a history major who went to college majoring in history with no civics background at all. So that was tough. And I'm just so happy that this is here as a requirement, and that the kids are interacting with it and doing it, as you said. They're not just learning it, they're doing it. And I hope that in 10 years or 5 years, or when they graduate from high school, we'll see some of them in local government, because that's the point. That's the point of it all. So thank you very much for the work you do on this.
Thank you all.
Okay, moving on. We have an athletics presentation. Mr. Bennell, I'm assuming this is you.
That's correct.
That's a good guess. That's James Bunnell, athletic director for the district. Thank you guys for having me tonight. Dr. Burnham told me that I have a 2-hour window to do my presentation, so I'm going to take full advantage of that. But no, I'm kidding. Hopefully, I just wanted to give you a brief update on spring. And Dr. Burnham and I put together just a quick little PowerPoint hitting on how the department is communicating information out, and some of the things that we, as the athletic department, have done this year to both enhance and gain, provide information and gain a better understanding of ongoings within the department. First, I'm going to start off. I believe you guys all have the information that I sent in your folders with the spring sports report with the numbers that are like out of this world amazing. To say the least, when you look at last year having middle school students in middle school, only like 50 something participating to over 100 and something participating this year, we're talking over 100% increase of participation. And a little bit of that does coincide with the structure that we have in place with Mr. Santry as the principal over both the middle high school, but in reality, a lot of the offerings, we had those offerings in place last year for students in grades 7th and 8th. There's just so many more students that have come out and are participating, which is awesome. I don't know what other word to describe it, that the amount of kids that we're able to service after school that are in good hands of such wonderful coaches that we have in the district is it's just great seeing that. This number, the number of unified track, that has changed. It actually has gone up. We've gained 6 more students in unified track, which is wonderful to see between both students and partners. So that percentage is going to increase even more at the high school level. But just overall across the board, you can see that there's a large number of students that are staying after to participate in athletics, and they're in a safe spot. They're learning from great coaches, and they're doing something that they enjoy. We had a wonderful track meet yesterday at home, which I got to be a part of and see all the kids doing their thing. Baseball, softball kicked off on Monday. Boys lacrosse had a game yesterday. Girls lacrosse played on Monday night. Spring is underway and it's in full swing, and it's just great to be a part of being outside, seeing kids, doing what they enjoy without having to, wear a mask, riding the bus to away games, to just pretty much almost very close to having a normal sports season again. So that's spring sports. Any questions?
No, it looks like spring has sprung.
Spring. Yes.
Mr. Laitman?
Thanks. I did have a question in regards to co-ops. Are there any co-ops in the spring? And if you could just talk about those briefly.
Sure. We have 2 co-ops, one that we host and one that we are a guest. We still host for boys lacrosse, students from Fitchburg and students from Air. This year, Air has sent us 1 student, and Fitchburg has sent us 4, which add to that lacrosse number. I think it puts it a little over 30 from where it was. The number that I sent you in the Excel document is just our kids. So we can add an additional 5 to boys lacrosse, which helps us pretty much able to sustain 2 teams where a lot of, especially in boys and girls lacrosse this year, I hope it's not an ongoing trend, but a lot of the schools that we do play have notified us that they were unable to field a JV level team, which makes things a little difficult for scheduling purposes. An awesome thing for us is that we are able to field both teams, but trying to find other schools to compete against has become a little bit of a challenging, but we're working on figuring out how to recoup those games that we have lost. We are a guest with Fitchburg High School for tennis. For boys and girls, there were no boys that signed up this year. And there were a couple girls that signed up. It's not a varsity level sport this year at Fitchburg. They graduated a lot, and they're focused more on like a rebuilding and developmental program. And we have 2 girls currently signed up for that. And I know we are working on the communication with the new coach that they have hired to get those kids interested over there and participating in tennis.
Thank you.
Right, any other questions? Mr. Schoenbrini.
Mr. Brown, I was looking at the data that you sent over. Why is there so few options for sixth graders?
That well, we have middle school track that's really the school sport offering. Back in the fall, the school committee with the new structure of leadership at the high school, it was in school committee policy or with sports that sixth graders were not able to compete at the varsity level. It was just for 7th and 8th grader, or at the high school level, just for 7th and 8th graders to compete at the high school level. For largely part that a lot of the town offerings for that younger level are available still. Where at the school level, where teams are actually struggling to field a JV type program with even 7th and 8th graders, to then add middle school programming on top of that. Schools that did offer those middle school programs are now even taking a further step back and not even having those. Where track is, not a one size fits all, but a lot of students of a lot of different abilities can participate in track in some way, shape, or form. That's a sport that is not going to go away anytime soon, because it can reach so many different levels. Does that help answer your question, or?
Yeah, so I just want to jump in here on this one too. It was several years ago that we started a middle school sports program, an athletic program. And there were surveys that were administered to gauge interest in which types of sports, students and families were looking to see in a middle school program. Once we had that information, AD Bunnell had to then look regionally to see what other districts also had existing middle school teams. Without other teams to compete against, we really wouldn't be able to have a season. So it was a complicated multi-stage attempt to establish some middle school athletic programs. And that's why certain things are open to 6th graders. Some things are open to 7th and 8th graders at the high school level, but only, it's been our practice here based on school committee vote, that only under conditions when we need to field a team, when we would not otherwise have a team. We then allow 7th and 8th graders to participate at the high school level. Hopefully that's helpful as well.
Thank you, Dr. Burnham.
Any other questions? Okay.
And then, am I able to share my screen or? Yes. Can everybody kind of see? I hope I did it right.
Yes.
Okay. So this is just a quick winter sports recap. We had 194 total students participating in winter athletics. We had 1 student recognized as a league MVP, 16 league all-stars, and 2 league championships. We had several individuals, individual track records were broken. Members of the track team competed at the state championship meet. Additionally, moved on to the New England championship meet, and some even qualified and competed at the national championship in New York. The girls basketball team this year under the state tournament, the new state tournament format, made it all the way to the Final Four. We had home field advantage all the way up until the Final Four game, which they unfortunately lost. The girls basketball team and the girls indoor track team were both recognized with MIAA State Sportsmanship Awards. This is our 5th and 6th State Sportsmanship Award as a department this year. That's almost unheard of for teams to be recognized from the state. That's so many in one year. The girls indoor track team have received their award already. Girls basketball, I guess I'm kind of breaking the news to them over this meeting. The players don't know, but the coach and Mr. Santry do know. We're working on setting up time for the MIA to come down and present the girls team with that award. There are more details with specifics on the students who advanced in what records and what accomplishments were available in the winter sports recap that I sent out or sent to Mr. Santry, and that was sent out in his Friday email a couple Fridays ago, and was also posted on the communication platform that the department uses. And it's also available on the athletic department website. The Lunenburg Athletic Department and how we communicate. Basically, since coming here 4 years ago, one of the things that was brought to my attention was that people wanted more information, or just places to find information, or to just have somewhere to go where they could find out about the athletic department. I've worked hard to try and do my best to communicate, to provide this information to all stakeholders involved within the Lunenburg community, knowing that there's always room for improvement, that I'm definitely not perfect, and that I do, I may miss something here or there, but I am trying my best to get as much information out to everybody as I possibly can. And one of the ways this year was bringing this new technology called SportsU. It's a free web-based and app-based platform to all of the athletic teams in the middle and high school. So parents actually, if they have a student that's playing in a middle school team or a high school team across multiple levels, they have one place to go to get their information. Coaches are posting results, posting schedule changes, general information regarding their teams on this platform, and parents receive notifications when a coach posts. There's also, so this is what a team page looks like. This is just the boys ice hockey team page. People have to be invited in by the coach. They can communicate with the coach. One of the wonderful things of this platform is once somebody joins a team, they no longer can they say, I didn't receive that message, or you never sent it out, because once something is sent, as long as you're a member, you can actually, an administrator can go in and look and see who's that was sent to and if they've read it or not yet. So someone can always go and say, well, yes, it was sent to you. You just unfortunately didn't read it yet, but the information is there. The teams post their calendar, both of games and practices, in that app. And then as soon as something changes, it's very similar. The parents would receive a notification, the same with the players, of that change. There's also the Lunenburg coaches page, which is also on this app as well, where I try to post news from the MIAA, news from the district, different files that pertain to the coach, whether it's an anti-hazing form, other forms that they need to sign off on. There's videos that can be posted in this. There's also in the coach's calendar, I've set up different reminders to be sent to them to either check in with their team or check in with the grades. Remember to send out just like an email update as to what is going on week. This is just a sample post. Like I said, videos in there as well. In addition to the Sports U page, I try to send out preseason and season newsletters and end of the season recaps. There's information with the athletic schedules that are sent out in Mr. Santry's weekly update and any pertinent accomplishments or updates regarding athletics. There's also the athletic department website, which is here, which I can hopefully see if my link works. Oh, nope, my link didn't work. Well, on the athletic department website, there's a whole bunch of information that I post there and updates. We also have the scheduling websites where people can sign up for notifications for game and schedule changes as well. I don't know what happened. There is more to my PowerPoint, I promise. I'm on Twitter and I post regularly for game day competitions and special moments. Like here's the senior recognition for one of the teams. Here's just an example of a schedule announcement that usually goes off in the morning. So as long as people are following me right there at Blue Knights AED1, they can get these announcements and updates. This year, the MIA added the implicit bias requirement after the fall season. So in the winter season, the coaches were awesome in getting the students to not only sign the MIA pledge, but to make sure that the students completed their NFHS requirement course. For the spring season, this was able to be added to the registration. So students were able to just sign off that they have completed this requirement, as opposed to the old-fashioned way of keeping the paper trail of that. We now have it electronically. And this is now a yearly requirement, like the concussion requirement, for students to take. For tryouts, we really rarely have to cut anybody. It's more of where the placement of team is going on, what placement of within the program. And coaches are encouraged to, share what they're looking for in the students during tryouts, how they're going to be evaluated, so that they know where they can work on to reach at the level that they want to be at. These are just some of the things that are suggestions as to how coaches can go about evaluating students for those first couple of days of their season. And this is something that we did a couple of years ago, but then the pandemic happened, so it became a little bit harder. And this year, both in the fall and in the wintertime, we started to gather data from the student athletes on their experience to provide feedback, working with Dr. Burnham and Mr. Santry to see how that we can improve the athletic department. And hear from the kids firsthand as to what went well, what didn't go well, what they'd like to see changed. Some things that are in our control, some things that are out of their control, out of our control are mentioned, but nonetheless, it's good to have that information. Now let's see if this link worked, if I did it right. Oh, killing me. All right, well, anyways, there's a variety of different questions that are asked about the team experience, the coaches' communication, the experience for at practice, knowledge of the sport, and all that is compiled, broken down into graphs. Dr. Burnham has a copy, Mrs. Santry has a copy of those from the fall and winter season. And they have at the end of the survey, there's a general overall rating 1 to 5 as to how your experience was during the season. Both in the fall and in the winter surveys, there were certain things of the, I guess, negative or needs improvement piece. A lot of people complained about the transportation aspect, which is something I understand, but it's also something that is a little bit out of our control given the circumstances, and it's comparable. We're really no different than other districts because everybody's facing the same issue, but I do understand how that can be frustrating.
Looks like Mr. Bundle accidentally exited the meeting. Oh, his power just went out. All righty. Okay, so the slides that he had remaining were a summary of the student athlete surveys from the fall. And from the winter. And let's see. He was also going to share with you, oh, he's back in, maybe on his phone. Hello, Mr. Bunnell. You're muted.
I'm back with a flashlight.
There you go.
I'm sorry, and on my phone. Can't make this stuff up.
So I went over the last 2 slides with the survey results summarized, and now we've got on display the winter athletics recap.
Oh, thank you. So this is our just the sample of the winter athletics recap. I try to just touch upon the awesome accomplishments for across all of athletics, and just highlight the participation numbers and what we offer during the season. I started this year. I did it with the fall, and I thought it was successful. So I wanted to just highlight, like I said earlier, just hit upon the wonderful things that our student athletes and teams and coaches are doing. The one thing that this is missing is the girls basketball state sportsmanship award, because even as long as I waited to do this one, I found out probably 2 days after that this was sent out that we did win that award. So I didn't get a chance to put a picture of that in there, but nonetheless, I'll probably have like a little blurb in the spring sports recap of that accomplishment. I feel like I'm telling ghost stories.
All right, so I don't know if there are any questions.
Does anyone on the committee have a question? I would just comment that you certainly had a very successful winter season. And my congratulations to the student athletes who worked so hard during the winter to make that happen, and their coaches. And thank you for the update on the communication, because communication has been a theme this evening. We've heard a lot about communication tonight, and you certainly have tried to incorporate different types of communication in ways to make people aware of what's going on easier. Does anyone on the committee have any comments? I want to thank you for your flashlight effort, and and I hope your power comes back on soon.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that, and I apologize.
That one's out of your control.
Thank you, Mr. Bunnell.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. So next is an action item, which has to do with the Keystone Collaborative update.
And the action that we're seeking is just an acceptance of a report, an update. So this update is the Keystone Collaborative quarterly update. Currently, the census, the number of students enrolled in programs is 150 students across all of the programs that they offer. The DESE program review has been completed, and the executive director is awaiting the report from DESE. Currently, he's only aware of one issue, and it was a procedural documentation issue around program manuals being returned from families and held on file. So that adjustment will be made. The new Fitchburg location is undergoing bathroom renovations. There's continued support of the member districts of the collaborative through contracted services, such as occupational therapists, school psychologists, etc. And Keystone will soon be receiving a Trexo robotic gait trainer. It will be a one-year lease and will assist in assessing and teaching students with physical limitations who require gait training. That's a progress report from our Keystone Collaborative. And that's all I have for you this evening.
All right. Does anyone have any questions about the progress report, the quarterly report? Seeing none, is there anyone that would like to make a motion to approve the report? Mrs. Kelly?
I will make a motion to accept this Keystone quarterly update.
And do I have Ms. Shapiro?
I'll second that motion.
All right, and a roll call vote.
Mr. Schoolambrini? That's a thumbs up.
Yes.
Ms. Shapiro?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Leighton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Archambault?
Yes.
Thank you all.
All right. Thank you very much. That brings us to public comments, and public comments at this point are open to any comment under the scope of authority of the school committee. Is there anyone in the public with a comment? I am not seeing any raised hands.
Nor am I.
Okay, then we will assume there are no comments. Anybody on the committee with a comment? I had one comment. I didn't want to make it at the beginning because I thought maybe I'd be stealing our student representative's thunder, but I wanted to congratulate the high school band on their silver award at the mic competition over the weekend. So that being said, reports, the Athletic Advisory Committee.
Yes, so we met on Monday in person. It was a 7 o'clock meeting. One of the things we've been working on is a booster guide, as there's pretty much constant turnover in boosters as kids graduate. A lot of our members thought it was a good idea to put ideas down on paper so that way as people leave and new people come in, that there's a lot more information passed down. So we've been working on that. We're also, we keep bringing up a unified booster. So we've been kind of brainstorming that, talking about the pros and cons, and still looking to get more information about that, but still looking into a potential unified booster. There was also an update on the snack shack, but it continues to be an ongoing dialogue and still trying to work on a resolution. So a lot of the fall sports are looking forward to trying to access as much as they can utilizing the snack shack. We had 3 approved fundraisers. The golf boosters was looking to get they got a raffle ticket booster approval to get ready for the fall. And then track and field had 2 fundraisers approved, a car wash, and then a Blue Knights umbrella sale. So look out for those umbrellas and go out and buy an umbrella. We'll be meeting again in June as well.
Sounds good, thank you. Finance Committee, they have been extremely busy. Since our last meeting, they met on March 17th with our administration. Dr. Burnham and Mr. Cassidy attended to go over our budget, and they had the administrative budget and an unclassified budget, which I guess is just anything that doesn't fit someplace else. And they talked about debt service. On the 23rd, they met and heard from Monty Tech. And as many times as I hear that, I'm never exactly sure how that all works, but we ended up that have to pay more. And basically what it comes down to is that we pay more, Sterling pays more, and it has to do with the formula, and it's state run. Monty Tech requires very little over the foundation budget. There was, I think it was $60,000 over the foundation budget, split between all 14 or whatever it is districts. So basically it's what the state says you have to pay. So there's not much conversation on that.
Carol, I had heard that there was more Lunenburg students going this
year. There are more Lunenburg students going, but even with that, it's out of whack. Excuse me. Yeah, it went from, I think, 82 to 94. And 4 of those are school choice. So, that adds to it as well. 2 of them, I think, at Leominster Trade and 2 at Neshoba Valley. Definitely the high increase that we saw this year is due in great amount to the additional enrollment, but it's still out of whack. And like we pay, and I know very different communities, but Athol pays $3,000 a kid. We end up paying like $12,000 or $13,000 a kid. We asked about, the Finance Committee was very good about questioning about how we got an increase in our Chapter 70 funding due to low income students. That doesn't translate to them somehow. So, it didn't, our low income status on Chapter 70 doesn't help us at all with Monty Tech, which I don't really understand, but they kept asking and I never got an answer that I really completely understood. But anyways, so I watched it. We were meeting simultaneously, so I watched it online, but that was the story on that night. And then they met again the next night on the 24th to hear the budget from PAC, from the sewer, and to talk about other moneyed articles. And then they met again on the 31st, and that was the public hearing on the budget. There was a lot of discussion about the capital plan and the concern about our number regarding the amount it would cost for the air conditioning at the primary school, that that they had asked about the number that Mr. Londa had put in, and then somebody, the other engineers said it could be more. And they did explain that Dr. Burnham is looking into shoring up those numbers so that we know exactly what it is we will be dealing with. So
or at this point, Mrs. Ashambo, that for the benefit of the committee, that we've consulted with an engineer that will be coming in to do a peer review. So they'll take a look at the original design for the building and what was originally included in that design relative to the AC. But they'll also take a look at the specs that were put out by DiGiorgio more recently and offer an opinion as to what might be the appropriate way forward, or which option is good option or not a good option, or if they're both equally good options. We'll find out. They understand that we're working on a timeline here because the town meeting is the first Saturday in May.
So yes. Okay, so that was basically what the discussion was about that. And they are meeting again on the 14th of April. So now I've moved all my papers. Okay, here we go. The PTO is meeting next Monday night. School councils, primary school.
We have not met.
And the elementary school?
We met on Thursday, the 24th. Heidi already went over a lot of what we talked about with the climate survey results. MCAS is well underway. Apparently everyone is doing great. They have got their new protocols in place regarding the lunchroom. I think 4th and 5th grade are back to the way it was pre-COVID, where they're all eating lunch together, recess together. 3rd grade, because it is such a large class, is still split in 2, which is probably the best move for right now. We went over the school improvement plan goals in math and reading. And to be honest, I do not have the date for the April meeting, so I will have to get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you very much. And the middle school, did you meet?
We did, and the thing that I took away was the upcoming dates for MCAS testing, and they're doing prep for that. And I think I'm trying to remember the other thing that Mr. Santry said. He tried to end the meeting early, and I was all in favor of that. So I don't remember what he said after that.
All righty. And the high school?
The high school met on the 24th. So yeah, some similar stuff. MCAS sessions 1 and 2 of 10th grade ELA are in the books. The high school tried a new proctor schedule with administration only, and it worked much better. Biology, physics, and 10th grade math are scheduled and to come. We had a budget update from Mr. Santry, and he gave us an update on the budget process. He's hoping for a position for tier 2 support that will be achievable after town meeting, hopefully. We talked about the high school class registration process. As of the 24th, they had received all course selection data from grades 8 through 11, expecting the full picture of they were expecting the full picture of scheduling that week. On the 31st, they were scheduled to start Power School scheduling training, which is the first step in class schedule building. And they are on schedule for master schedule building, and they're working hard to minimize scheduling conflicts, so students are able to have their preferred schedule in as many instances as possible. That being said, some classes don't run and there are some unavoidable conflicts, but the whole admin team is working very hard to make everyone happy. We had an update on safety protocol guidelines. So the plexiglass was removed from the cafeteria, but the project room has remained open for lunch for students who want a less crowded space to eat. Group work has started again, and students and staff seem much happier, and the administration hopes that the measures can remain lifted. The culture seems happier and students seem to be engaging with everyone more. Open windows and outdoor time with nicer weather helps too. Mr. Santry has seen maybe 8 to 10% of students still wearing masks and has not heard any reports of social discomfort. We had a brief update on the handbook committee. They're going to be presenting to us on the 4th. They are going to update the school improvement plans after the MCAS data comes in. And that was all we had. We will be meeting next on the 28th.
All right, thank you very much. Sounds busy.
Yes.
Next is capital planning, but I'm assuming that didn't meet.
We have not met.
And wellness advisory.
We have not met.
Paxal?
No, we have not met. We're not meeting again until May 12th.
The Municipal Building Design Committee.
Yes, we met Monday as well over Zoom. We are not planning to meet over April vacation. That would have been our typical meeting. So we're meeting May 2nd in preparation for the town meeting update. This past meeting, we talked about space comparisons of what people are using right now for space and what was recommended in 2016 and then in 2020. And then looking at prioritization too. Just trying to find a way to kind of reduce costs, reduce space, and still looking at the big picture of what are we going to do with Ritter, what are we going to do with Town Hall, and what are we going to do with TCP, and again, finding ways to reduce costs. Are there other options for other spaces, whether PAC could go in another building, classrooms, can they go in different spaces? Michael Ray Jeffries is the chair. He was inquiring from the superintendent and wanted me to bring that to the superintendent about identifying potential other locations if TCP wasn't available for, say, extended day or ACE, Early Learning Center, more of the classroom type environments, where if TCP was potentially just office space, where it was the school offices and town offices, what the superintendent would be doing with those classroom spaces. So I think nothing's really been decided, but I think it's a lot of the brainstorming of where can we put different things, and can we use the Ritter, can we use Town Hall, can we use our schools as an option? Not ideal, but are those options, and what can we do? So that's where we left.
All right, thank you very much. Lifelong Learning Committee.
We have not met.
Okay. Policy Subcommittee.
We have not met.
MASC Workshop Report. There is a workshop on Friday, establishing legislative priorities and goals. So I thought I would listen in on that and see what that is about, because, you know, we had been talking about, particularly with the Chapter 70 stuff, having a better way to get to the legislators on some things, to see what they find legislative priorities and goals are. So that's on Friday. So I thought I would listen into that. And then the annual Day on the Hill is April 14th. I haven't gone to that before, and it is on Zoom. So I thought I would check that out. So that's what's going on there. I don't know if anybody else has seen anything or done anything else with that. Okay. Topics for future discussion. We have engaging parents. We have THES. We want to get back to the insecticide people. And we need to put on the third reading of the facility policy because that wasn't on. So that needs to go on there. Is there anything else?
Equity.
Equity has to go on there. Thank you. And while we're talking about future meetings, Laura had mentioned to me that she is unavailable on May 4th. I am unavailable till later. I definitely can't make the beginning of that meeting. Are we going to have enough people for a quorum that night, or should we reschedule? Or today I spoke with Dr. Burnham. She thought maybe we might be able to skip that one. So any thoughts? Will there be a quorum that night? I guess is the first question.
I will be there and can share if needed.
Okay. Ms. Shapiro, you will be there?
Yeah, I'll be there.
And Mr. Schoenbrini?
I'll be there.
All right, so we do have a quorum, so we'll leave that date in place unless the superintendent feels she can jimmy things around, so we don't need to meet.
I know that we can.
Or if it makes sense to do so.
I think that there was one topic. Originally, we had thought that we would talk about the communication survey results. And we had thought that we would be looking at handbooks. However, you know, those can certainly be either in one or the other can be moved up to the 27th. I think the handbooks really need to be, if not on the 4th, they'd have to be pushed back one more meeting, because I think it's too tight a crunch to turn around to have them final draft and ready for the school committee on the 27th.
Well, if it's doable. It's doable, but if it's going to make the other meetings too long, I mean, certainly, if I can't be at the meeting and Laura can't be at the meeting, we have 3 more people that can be at the meeting.
Yeah, we could do a minimal agenda too. Like we are having a meeting on the week before on April 27th. So I don't see it being a long agenda or needing to be a long agenda.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Okay, we can go with that then. So is there anything else from anyone? Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Leighton.
Make a motion to adjourn at 9:04 p.m.
And a second, Mrs. Kelly?
I'll second that motion.
All righty. A roll call vote, please.
Mr. Schoenbrini?
Yes.
Ms. Shapiro?
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Leighton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Archambault?
Yes.
Thank you all.
All right.
Good night.
Have a good evening, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night now.